my name is Eddie C, and welcome to My Positive Podcast. I'll bring you positive stories of people from all walks of life, because everyone has a story to tell. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to MPP, My Positive Podcast. I'm your host, Eddie C, and today is episode 8, and we'll be talking about the word spiritual, what it means to my 3 guests, and what it may mean to you. But before we start, I would first like to thank you all listening to the show and supporting me every week with My Positive Podcast. Please spread the word to your friends, and the more the merrier, and the more positivity that my guest and I can bring to you each week. My first guest is going to be someone who's a classical piano player and orchestra leader, and also a fantastic portrait artist. My second guest is a legendary female vocalist who has worked with some of the biggest names in the music industry over the years, and has also had a fantastic solo career herself. And my third guest is a old alumni friend of mine from high school, who played basketball in college and later on started his own company together with his wife, and does a lot for his community and his church. So if you're curious to listen to those stories, tune in and stay positive. My name is Eddie C, and you're listening to My Positive Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my first guest is a pianist, a music composer, arranger, classical concert leader, and makes entertainment concepts. Plus, he's also a fantastic painter and has become a good friend of mine over the years. Please welcome Mr. Andy Smeets. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just great, Eddie. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine, man. I'm glad to have you on the show, and that you can share your story with us. I'm going to get right into the questions, actually.
All right. Sure. Go for it.
All righty. Well, can you give us a little bit about your background, how you got involved with classical music as a composer and a musician?
Okay. Well, it all started out when I was 6 years old. And 6 years old brings us, with our almost mutual age here, to the early 1960s. And you had no choice but to study classic music. You wanted to study music way back then. In my case, it was piano, and somewhat later it was church organ. You would receive classic education. I mean, considering that our friends and colleagues like, be it Nipin Noya or be it Margriet Eshuis, didn't start teaching at conservatories until, the early 80s, I want to say, if not later. Until then, there was just nothing to learn pop-wise. So whatever you learned pop-wise, you learned on the street. And your education was classic. Same for me. I studied classic piano. Later on, as I mentioned, classic church organ. And then on from there, studied with several different musicians. With one, I studied counterpoint and composition. The other one, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So to get the classic music introduced, I guess I grew up with it. That's about the easiest way of explaining it.
But you're actually coming from a musical family, in fact, huh?
Well, quasi. Let's put it this way. My grandmother was a singer, hobby singer for that matter. Both my parents did not play any instruments, but I have an older brother, and he's a concert pianist as well. Director, used to work for the Ballet van Vlaanderen. So yeah, we come. We're 2 brothers, and that's what we do. We do music, so to speak.
Oh, that's wonderful.
As far as the pop music and the jazz influences, growing up in the 60s and the 70s, you as well, we grew up with pop music as it kind of was made. We were there. We're part of that history, looking at it.
Right.
Which is it's a grand thing for one, and it's a great schooling as well, because you saw how the big guys did what they did, and learned from that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely golden period. For me, however, it took until I was already in Brussels then, because used to live in the Netherlands, where I was born, obviously, and moved to Brussels for different reasons initially. But there I started studying again, and I worked under Leel-Össy, the director of the jazz stream in Maastricht and in Antwerp at the time being. And with him, I started studying jazz. So my love for jazz had always been there, but I I guess I wanted something formal in a way. Once you're a classic musician, you somehow listen to what's going on, and you're like, okay, I want to be able to read this. I want to be able understand what they're doing. So there again, I went the quasi classical way, if you will, to at least study and be able to read it, which brought me to a lot of fun, but also a lot of discussions. Because especially with my bass players, they could never understand why I was in their way with my left hand.
Oh,
You know, whether it was Elizabeth or Jimmy Glassmacher, or a friend of you and me, as we work together, and even with Sergey nowadays, he sometimes loads me, says, "Andy, stay out of my places." You know? And I guess that's still the classical influence, that where my left hand does too much sometimes, and gets into their way, so to speak.
right.
So yeah, that's basically why I got involved with classic music, and later on, obviously, with learning from the street initially, the pop music, and eventually switching to that fusion of both pop and jazz and classic on the other side.
You make some fantastic compositions, and I've had the pleasure of working with you in your studio. You have a very beautiful location, and we've done some recordings there, actually with a lot of an international classical musicians that you work a lot with.
Sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Basically, I guess there's two ways of looking at it. If you live in Brussels, then you live in a melting pot, no matter how you look at it. So whatever connections you make in the music world is international. Don't forget, on top of that, we've got a Flemish, we've got a Wallonian conservatory, and just outside of Brussels, the beautiful city of Leuven, we have the Lemons Institute. They have their musicians there, and many of the musicians come over here and they stay. A lot of the musicians I work with ended up playing for the National Orchestra, for the Charlemagne Orchestra down south, or for any of the other big orchestras. And they're just around and available, for that matter. On top of that, already from working with musicians in the Netherlands, I had my contacts, and I've mentioned his name before, Jimmy Glassmacher, who eventually introduced me to you, for that matter, when we were working together with Monique Kleeman from Lois Lane. It's the first time we actually met. So it's a networking thing.
You have your company, and it's called the I Am Music and Events. And one of the things that you have on there is music is a piece of art. We make you part of the experience.
Right.
And on that note, I'd also like to bring out the fact that you are a fantastic artist as far as making paintings and so on. And
Thank you.
I've seen some of your work. I saw this beautiful painting you made of Monique Clayman's at the time.
Right. Yep. Yep, that was from a special project. I was asked to actually paint portraits of famous musicians, well-known musicians. Well, Monique is famous, come on. I mean, famous musicians in the Netherlands, and I made portraits of those that I had worked with, like Monique, like Margriet Eshuis. So there were quite a lot of portraits at the time being. But that one, indeed, I remember, because you walked in saying, like, hey, there, that's Monique.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Funny enough, a couple of months later, Monique and her husband walked in, and her husband looked at me and says, "Oh, you've got Monique hanging in the house." he as well kind of looked at that. But yeah, it's always been that question from young on: what shall I study? Shall I study art, or shall I study music? And never really could make the decision to go one direction. So I ended up combining it.
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful. That's what I like to do with music and photography as well. It's
right.
It's actually one motivates the other, I think, because they're both creative forms, and you get a whole different viewpoint, because looking through the eyes and picturing the music, or picturing the music and then looking through the eyes, it works both ways,
True. Yeah, and even historically, I mean, if you take, going back into my classic knowledge here, if you look at people like Russian composer Modest Mussorgsky, who wrote pictures at an exhibition, literally compositions based on paintings of a friend that had passed away. So there's historically that you can find these combinations quite well. It's unfortunately nothing that I have created myself as a thought, but it definitely brings about who I am, where I can put both my thoughts in harmony either be it musical harmony or be it in harmony of lines and paint. Definitely. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I know you're also teaching a lot of youth as well, basic piano and
True.
classical
Yeah.
forms. I've seen a couple of your students at one of the sessions that came to look when we were recording. In this day and time where basically going online to do the sort of so-called quick courses but not really getting the heart and soul that I think a personal teacher could give them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. True.
What's your idea about that?
It's a very simple but straightforward one, I'm sure. It'd be like if I were to be able to teach somebody how to drive a car, tell them to let's drive with with a video game, learn how to drive the car, learn the theory, and then eventually put him in a car and have him drive through the streets of Brussels. I'm not sure that that's a safe way of going. I similarly see it with learning how to play the piano. I mean, playing the piano is more than just being able to touch these keys.
It's with every instrument, man.
There's so much more involved, whether it's your whole position of how your body is set, whatever it comes out with breathing. A lot of people always think that breathing is a technique that goes with brass or with wood instruments, but is with every instrument. I mean, who am I telling that? It's like the release of stress, the influence of what you can do with your breath, what you can do with your whole pose. There's no way you can learn that online. Is it a good alternative if you have no other choice? Of course. I mean, it's better than nothing. Let's put it that way. But it's there's a good thing to say about the fact that teachers will never come out or get out of fashion for that matter, because you will need them. You will be influenced by them in a way that online cannot influence you. And even though you may have a person talking to you there, but it's still Johnny behind the screen that God knows is telling you something. Whereas,
Absolutely. Nothing like the real thing, man. Nothing like the real thing.
true, absolutely. I can only agree. That's how it is. Definitely.
Well, I've got one more question for you,
Okay.
and it's based on our theme, which is spiritual. And for me, I would like to know, what does spiritual mean to you?
Whew, a lot. actually, spiritual defines my life in that respect. It has to do with a belief. Obviously, I believe that there's body and soul, if you will, be that in music, but that's also in regular life for that matter. And for me, I try to keep my body in shape and feed it the best I can feed it to give a nice residence to my soul for that matter. But that soul in itself determines my day, it determines my music, it determines my feelings. For me personally, I start my day, for instance, with meditation. It's the first thing I do. I specifically wake up pretty much every morning at 5 o'clock to first meditate and then go for a run or a walk, at least do sports. Before I start my day, it's my me time, if you will, but it also sets the thought of wanting to live today. I much rather live in the now and look at the future, and for that matter, be able to create my own future than looking back at what had happened yesterday or a year ago. You can't change it. Happened. It's there. It's what it is. For me, that's one of the most important things, to live now and to create that future. On top of that, I think that there's that certain stage that you get in with meditation and with being mindful, and to use a modern term for that matter,
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
influences the capacity of being able to compose, to work with it. No matter who you talk to, even the great musicians that I'm happy to have worked with, be it Robbie Lakatos, the gypsy violinist, or be it Michael Goodman, the violinist, or Eliana Reyes, the pianist. You all somewhere along the line hear them also mentioning it comes from somewhere and defined somewhere. I call it the universe, but you can also call it inspiration. You can call it whatever, but it's definitely something that is only there because my mind is clear and opens up to receive that 2% that you need in order to be working hard for 98% to make that thought or that theme that comes up, to make that work and put it into a composition. So yeah, for me, spiritual or soulful, if nothing else, that's what I live by. Very important for me. Yeah.
Well, I'm totally on the same line with you when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, we've had some great dinners together
Sure.
and conversations
Yep.
about
Yep.
how what we eat, how we think, how we see it is going to influence how we live, And in this day and time, of course, we've had the COVID period, which is hopefully we're starting to see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, as they would say. How has that influenced you as well in your whole spiritual way of lifestyle?
Not real much, to be very honest with you. I've just lived my life over the year and a half that we're going through this, or pretty much year and a half. Having been able to live in my meditative state and working with it, I've just done my thing, and at the very end, do I miss certain things? Yeah, of course. I would love to be on stage. We all miss that. I mean, that's like a kicking in an open door at the moment. But I've made the time that I had very useful to work on my compositions through a festival where I met a young lady that happened to be also working for the music industry in Los Angeles. So we've made good connections, and we're working at this moment with getting some of the compositions that you were actually part of, to get that to be presented to the producers, getting some good feedback, also some feedback to learn from, because the American industry is definitely different than the European industry, for that matter, especially if it comes down to the way we mix our music. So it's a good learning experience for one, and not having to go on stage in that respect was a positive thing for me, because it brought about other positive stuff, which again, defines my lifestyle. I could have sat there like, oh, and I can't do this and I can't do that, but you make it work. You look at what the future is about, and the future at the moment is about, okay, still my music and my art. So I painted a lot. I did a lot of composing, learned a lot as far as, how to arrange for music, how to arrange the music for film. And, so it was definitely an interesting period, but definitely not a negative period, or a period that held me back from being the creative soul that I can be.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. Well, listen, I just want to thank you so much for coming on, taking the time out. And it's always good to have a conversation with you. We usually get into our whole spiritual minded ideas and talk about things happening in the universe and all. So it's always wonderful to talk to you, buddy. And of course, we've got to do that again in the near future.
We sure should.
Have a bite, and we'll have a bite to eat together.
We'll do that.
So, and next time you have to come to Antwerp.
All right. I'll keep you up to that. And thank you so much for having me on the show. Good luck with the show, and we'll be in touch soon. All right.
Okay. Before I go, I would just want to ask you one little small thing. Do you have anything you would like to tell our public as far as spiritual is according to how you would give them advice to be spiritual?
To enjoy the moment. Enjoy now, although now cannot be captured, because now is gone before you say the word now. But if you're able to get yourself to the point, enjoy now, whatever the now may be, positive or negative, enjoy it, because the now creates your future, and it is you creating the future, and no one else, nothing else but you.
On that, man, I'd like to thank you very much. We'll talk to each other soon. You take care, buddy. All right.
You betcha.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
This is My Positive Podcast with Eddie C. My next guest was born in Newark, New Jersey, in the USA. She worked with artists like Dusty Springfield, Donna Summer, Joe Cocker, Elton John, Giorgio Moroder, Blue Mink, and the Rolling Stones, just to name a few. Plus has had a wonderful solo career in Europe and is still going strong. I have had the honor and pleasure of performing with her and singing with her a few times in the Netherlands. And I always refer to her as sis, because we're like family as well as colleagues. Please welcome my next guest, the legendary Miss Madeline Bell.
Hello, my bro.
How
How you
are you
doing?
doing?
I am fine.
Great to be in touch with you. So I'm just going to go right into the questions because I know we have a lot to talk about. So can you tell our audience basically how you
Yeah.
ended up in Spain and a little bit about your career? It's been such a full career, I guess you could say.
Well, I hope you've got a large cup of coffee there. I first came over to Europe in 1962 in a musical called Black Nativity. And we were supposed to be in Europe for 6 weeks and then go back home. But things just snowballed and we ended up being in Europe for 14 months. And everybody went back in August 1963. And I came back to Europe in September 1963. And I've been in Europe ever since, including Holland. I've been everywhere, literally everywhere. What got me to Spain? There's 50 some years between that and now. I've actually been in Europe now since 1963. So, I mean, if you can count, what's that, 50, how many years? We came down to Spain, my husband and I came to Spain in 1980 after being on tour with James Last. And we came down just for a 10-day holiday. And then we came again a few months later and decided to go and have a look at houses. We didn't intend to buy anything. We just thought we'd have a look. And the house that we looked at, the very first house we looked at, we loved, went around, looked at other places and came back. And that's this house that I'm in right now. So 40 plus years ago, we bought this little house, and that's where I am now. And I love it.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. The weather looks like it's pretty sunny and hot there at the moment.
Right now at what, about 11:15 in the morning, the temperature is about 23. And it's only going to get warmer, hotter as the summer gets closer to us. And this is why I love where I live. I love the sun. I don't sit in the sun. I just love it. I just love it.
All righty. Nice weather is always giving a positive vibe. Huh?
Yeah,
it's always.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the people that you worked with and how that all came about?
Firstly, I always have to give credit to Dusty Springfield because she gave me my very first session. That was in January 1965. And everybody wanted to use us after that. That was myself, another singer named Leslie Duncan, who wrote Love Song that Elton John recorded, and another singer named Kay Garner and Kiki D. Between the four of us, we did everything with Dusty, and including her 2 TV series. And then we were lucky enough to start getting more and more work. So over the years, I have literally worked with everybody. I mean, Elton John, we knew him as Reggie Dwight, and he played keyboard for Blue Mink because he was just a T-boy.
All right.
That was his job in Denmark Street, was to run around fetching tea for everybody, but he used to write songs. And one thing led to another, and he became Elton John, and all of Blue Mink are on his first, his second album. Elton John, John Lennon. I did Power to the People with John Lennon. That's a whole story. That was wonderful. I actually went to John's house and walked in that white room where he recorded Imagine.
Wow.
Who else? Yeah, George Harrison. I did a couple of things with him. He produced Ringo Starr. Back Off Boogaloo, Back Off Boogaloo.
Right.
And it don't come easy. And then I got a call, and it was a session produced by George, but the artist was Billy Preston.
Oh, wow.
And the backing singers were myself, Doris Troy, who wrote Just One Look, and I felt so high. Yeah. And she was signed to Apple Records. So she rang me, and her and I and Billy did all the backing vocals. He played, and I played tambourine. He played piano and organ. We had Ginger Baker on drums.
Oh, wow.
Klaus Vorman on bass, and Eric Clapton on guitar.
Those are three.
That was
also three legends.
I know.
Wow.
And we could we could only record from like midnight until 6 o'clock in the morning because George was George. I mean, he was George Harrison, couldn't go anywhere during the day. So everything had to be done late at night. That was the session with George and who else? I never worked with Paul, though I worked with Paul's company, McCartney. The Rolling Stones, we got booked for a session, didn't know who it was for until we got there at midnight, and that was for the Stones. And it was the first session that I'd ever done where they actually brought in hot food for us in the middle of the night. This was a super group at the time. And that was myself and Doris Troy and another singer named Nanette Workman, whom I love Nanette. She taught me French. And we're on You Can't Always Get What You Want.
Right.
With the Stones, yeah. And I'm playing tambourine on the end of that as well. Who else? I mean, I've even done stuff with Led Zeppelin. And I played tambourine on Led Zeppelin track. I don't even know what the track was.
All righty.
So, you know, it was a job. It was always a pleasure, but it was a job for us, you know, and I loved what I did. And I didn't drive at that time in the 60s. So I had to learn how to use the underground
public
system.
Transportation.
So now when I go back to London, I don't even need to hire a car because I still know how to use the underground system, and that's the only way to get around London. Like Amsterdam, if you don't know how to use the buses and the trams, just forget it. Right. You know, the cars, please, forget the car.
I know all about that. I know all of.
Oh yeah.
You know, you've had such a wonderful career, and you know, just hearing you talk about it, I can kind of picture some of these folks that you worked with, and it was a historical time for the music industry actually as well. And nowadays we're in a whole different vibe. Of course, COVID hit us last year. And how have you been able to keep going strong with the whole situation?
Well, last year, the 10th of March, I flew from Malaga to Amsterdam. With the intention 2 days later of flying from Amsterdam to Estonia with the jazz orchestra of the Concertgebouw. We had 2 sellout concerts, Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles concerts. 12 hours before the flight, we got the message that everything was canceled.
Wow.
And I got the last flight out on the 12th of March back to Malaga, and I've been home ever since.
Wow.
I've done 3 piano and vocal gigs in Estepona, which is my local town, with my pianist. His name is David Lenker, in an art gallery. And that's basically to give his fingers a chance to be stretched and give my vocal cords a chance to be aired, because you make gas money. Right. There's no money because nobody's got any money.
Yeah, you're doing it for the fun.
And, yeah, exactly. And for friends as well, you know. So and we actually had a gig for this Friday in the same gallery, and it's now had to be canceled or postponed for 2 weeks because David's wife is now positive. She tested positive
for COVID
on Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but where I live is such a beautiful place. I'm blessed that I've got a roof over my head, clothes on my back, and food, and I feel okay. So I got no complaints. And tomorrow I go to get my second vaccination. So, and I got nothing to complain about. At my age, I'm very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
I really am very, very lucky.
Well, you know, you've been such an inspiration for a lot of musicians and vocalists with the career that you've had. And I can only salute everything you do. The times we worked together as well was always a joy and a pleasure and a big honor that we had a chance to sing together.
And we have to say thanks to Dolph de Vries.
What I would like to also ask you is there any one particular, let's say, session that not only did as a backing vocalist, but also as a solo artist that had a big impact on you, and you said, well, wow, this is something I'll never forget?
Oh, I've actually had a few of them. Well, I have to, something that a lot of people don't know about in this sort of world, that music world that we live in, is all the classical stuff that I did in Holland. The Young Messiah, the New London Chorale was the name of the project.
Yeah, I remember I did the percussion on that, right?
Yeah. Myself and Vicki Brown, we were asked to do that originally in 1979, I think it was. And I was actually amazed that I thought, why would they book me to sing classical stuff? This was the first one, which was The Young Messiah. And then after that, we did 3 or 4 albums, and I was always so fascinated with the fact that this was all classical stuff, and I never ever thought I would be doing all of this stuff. Young Amadeus and young Verdi, and it's like, I go back to Newark and people don't even know what I'm talking about.
I can imagine. I can imagine it.
They say, "Girl, what you doing over there?" And I say, "Oh yeah, I just did The Young Messiah." What? You just did what?
It was lovely music.
I was supposed to be doing a 22 date tour in Holland during November and December last year, and that had to be canceled as well.
Wow.
A whole 22 date concert tour.
Wow.
Thanks to COVID.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've no business in show business. It's no business. We know everything about it is appalling.
Well, you still have your sense of humor and your whole charisma. I hope our listeners can feel that when they're listening to this conversation.
But there's like if you haven't got a sense of humor in the business that we're in, you need to be in another business, because you better learn how to laugh.
Absolutely. That's one of the major tools you need in this business. That's exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Humor,
exactly.
Yeah.
I got one more question for you. Our theme is about spiritual. And what does spiritual mean to you?
For me, spiritual is a feeling. I mean, I just feel if I meet somebody and I warm to them straight away, there's something about them that just makes me want to go up to them and hug them. There's something, to me, there's something very spiritual about a person who is just, they exude love. I like to think that I'm a love person. I don't have time for negativity. I don't have time for people who are not full of some kind of love and compassion. Born in Newark, New Jersey, the one thing that we did have in the house, we didn't have much food or money or anything like that, but there was always some love in the house. My grandmother insisted on us going to church. I find it very, very difficult to describe the word. My thing is, if I like you, then that's something spiritual. There's something about you that's made me like you, because I like to think I'm very perceptive. Sometimes I'm a bit dumb, but I like to think that I know people really well, and I can read people. When you're standing up there on the stage, you better know how to read people.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a difficult question for me to ask. And ask me any other question, but that one. I sang spiritual. Because that's how we started.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how I started singing in church. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, as you know. And Newark has produced so much talent, starting with my boy Shaquille O'Neal. He's born and raised
I know
in
that.
Newark, New Jersey. Whitney Houston. My church and the New Hope Baptist Church, which was Whitney Houston, Sissy Houston, Dion and Dee Dee Warwick's church. My church used to compete with their church, our choir, every fourth Sunday. This was in the late 50s and early 60s. And Sissy Houston was in the choir, and there was no contest because the woman was brilliant. She could sing her butt off then. And so that's the place that I come from, Newark, New Jersey. Jerry Lewis, the comedian, he was born. He was actually thrown out of the same high school I was thrown out of.
Oh, you got thrown out of high school.
Yeah.
What happened? How did that happen?
Because I spent 51 days straight playing hooky. I went over to, well, she wasn't my cousin, but you know, when you grow up, your mom's friends and everything, their kids become your cousin. I went over to my cousin Helen's house. She had 2 kids, and Helen would, she would open the door, let me in, and then I would go and sleep on the couch. And she would be asleep in her room with 2. She had 2 kids, and she was lazy as well, so she didn't like getting up early. And one day, after 51 days, somebody knocked on the door, and I went and opened the door. And as I opened the door, I felt myself picking myself up off the floor. That was my grandmother. She knocked the hell out of me. So you want to play hooky, do you? I was amazed that I got away with it that long. Anyway, my reason for not going to school was that I didn't like school. They weren't teaching me the things that I was being told at home. All of the politics, the racial, all of that Black history and everything. I was learning that from home, not learning it from school. So going to school, the only thing that interested me was the singing classes and the cooking classes. The rest they could keep. I never went to a football game, never went to a basketball game, and never did any of that. All I did was I was in all the choirs in school and in church.
All right.
That's how I grew up. Yeah. I always wanted to sing, and I wanted to be a children's nurse. But then once I was expelled from school, that put that to rest. There was no way that was going to happen.
What would you like to leave behind with our audience as far as it is when it comes to that spiritual thing? With everything you've done in your life, with all the music you've made and all of the groups you work with, how would you sum that up in a spiritual way?
I like to think that I'm a good person. I'm only interested in good people. I'm only interested in love. I love people. I love life. I'm very blessed. I've been very blessed throughout my life. I don't wish any harm to anyone. I wish the best for everyone. I mean, if that's being spiritual, great. If not, then that's me. I just love people.
Well, we're going to leave it at that. Loving who you are. I just want to thank you again for your enthusiasm, your warmth, your love, and sharing your stories with our public today. It was really a pleasure. And it's such a pleasure to be able to talk and speak with you again. I wish you all the best the coming time, and hopefully we'll get a chance to make some more music together. And I'm sending a lot of love to you. Yeah. And thank you once again.
You're my little bro.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, darling. Take care of yourself.
This is My Positive Podcast with Eddie C.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my last guest is a fellow graduate from Westside High School in Gary, Indiana, and has been an IT manager with the Naval Facility Systems Command Mid-Atlantic. He also has a project called Living the Dream and has an internet retail business with emphasis on beauty, health, and wellness. Please welcome my dear friend and old school buddy, Mr. Louis Brame. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm doing great, man. Doing fantastic. Again, man, it is just so awesome to see you, man. It's been too long.
Absolutely. And it's been too long. And it's so funny. The time difference, I thought there was a 7-hour difference. I'm thinking you're still in the Midwest, but you're actually in Portsmouth. You're in Portsmouth, Virginia, man. You know, I was there as a little toddler with my parents before we came to Gary. So that's quite. Can
you recall what neighborhood you may have lived in?
Oh man, I know that's
a stretch.
I was like really, I think 4 years old, you know. So
that's cool. That's cool. But my wife and I, we moved here. September 10th, 1984.
All right.
Shortly after the birth of our second child, John and Leah.
Okay. All right.
Diane, my wife, we met at Diane and I met at Lincoln University. Mm-hmm. Out in Jefferson City, Missouri, where a lot of our friends that we went to high school with and grew up with were there. I had the good fortune of graduating and getting a full scholarship in basketball at St. Paul's College, which is a small HBCU that is now gone. You'll probably be seeing a movie or something. A young lady what did she do? I think that young lady that won one of the Oscars that grew up with us.
Right. I forget her name.
Gone there. had gone there, if I'm not mistaken, and she's going back to do a movie. No. Yeah, she's talking about trying to do a movie on the founder of St. Paul's College. If it's not her, it was another young lady that I know we know. And she's talking about doing a movie on the founder of St. Paul's College, which I thought was interesting. This gentleman's background, just on the clip she gave me, was just incredible.
Right.
But anyways, only stayed there for a semester and transferred out to Lincoln where my childhood friend was. I don't know if you remember Corey House or not. But anyway.
Vaguely.
They ended up going to Lew Wallace. And don't hold it against them. And I was there for 4 years where I met my wife and played basketball there also briefly. I only played like a semester really, waiting to get on there as a walk-on. And me and the coach, we just had differences.
Yeah.
And then also, you got to maintain your grades. Okay.
Right. That's
so at that time, I'm still trying to grow up. And, you look back at it, at this point in life, Eddie, I say, dog, I probably should have went into the service my first 4 years where I could have learned some more discipline. But I toughed out that growing period in college. Thank God that we grew up in a time when there was like SOGs, BOGs, those supplemental programs that allowed that door to stay open for us and would help financially pay for us to go to school.
Yeah, and of course, I left in 75 to come to Europe. So, but I was fortunate as well because I got an exchange program over here. And via that, it was possible for me to do a study. Of course, I got in contact with musicians over here, and then one thing led to another. And I decided after a couple of years to stop with the study and just go full professional as a studio musician,
Wow, man, that was awesome. Man, I tell you, when I first saw some of the stuff you were doing, man, I was like, I cannot believe this. Look, this little scrawny kid.
I used to be scrawny.
Oh, man. Man, look, all of us was like, 200 pounds lighter.
That's it. That's true. That's true, man.
Scrawny carrying instruments that we could hardly stand to lift, That's
right.
I had gone there to Lincoln, left there, transferred to North Carolina A&T State University, where I majored in engineering. I tell you, it was the funniest thing because I did 4 years at Lincoln, had accumulated 120 credits. Could have graduated with probably another semester.
Right.
But a calling was so hard on me to leave and just pursue engineering because that's what I wanted to do. And had the chairman of the math department and the science department, technology department begging me to stay. I said, no, I got to go. I had to go. And left, and I went to A&T, man. I thought I had died and gone to the Mecca. I tell you, that HBCU was just out of this world. It really was. And the people there, they were so impactful in my life and helping to mold me and get me through school. Because Diane came down a year and a half later. We had gotten married. We had a child. And we all lived on campus. We were like, a little family on campus there.
Yeah.
With our eldest daughter, Candace, who literally grew up the first 4 years of her life. And finished up that engineering program in 83, where I took my first position with the Corps of Engineers, Kansas City district there. And I stayed there 15 months because I always wanted to come back to the East Coast. I had a sister here whose husband was a boatswain mate in the Navy. And while I was in Greensboro at A&T, I would get the radio station from Norfolk. And I would always hear about how things were really progressive, for Blacks there in the Norfolk area. So it had planted a seed. And then when I came here and visited my sister a couple of times, I noticed that there was a lot of waterways and it just reminded me of home. Being around Lake Michigan and all the rivers and creeks around there. Right. But around here, man, it's like mad water because you're right here on the East Coast of the ocean.
Right.
So it got here and we just moved right into Portsmouth, where there was primarily all minority city administration. And it reminded me of Gary.
Back in the good old days.
Yeah. And,
back in the good old days, because there's not much left. There's not much of Gary.
I know. It went from like $4 billion a day industry floating through there to the Rust Belt in 79.
Right.
And, I share with people, say, back in shortly after we left, right, between 77 and 79, They say the city of Maryville, right outside of Gary, bought more building permits than any country in the world.
Right.
You know, and it was just crazy. I said, that is nuts. And then the jobs just, when things globalized, you know, and the steel industry just kind of folded up. Hey, when Detroit went down, that whole region went down.
Absolutely.
From Pennsylvania straight on over to Milwaukee. And we were right slam in the middle of it, you know. So those who did not migrate out, like yourself, myself, and a few others, you know, they scrambled. They did the best with what they had there. And those that are still there, I really got to take my hat off to them, because those type of individuals, you could go down a dark alley with, Jack. They're going to come out on the other side. They coming out on the other side.
That's true. Yeah, because it's that I saw a documentary recently about Gary on YouTube, and it was like, I brought tears to my eyes, because
I know.
You know, we knew it as a completely different city growing up as kids. You know?
Yeah.
You know, the Palace Theater, you know, the Broadway, man.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing left, man, but White Castle.
Yeah.
You know, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough to go back and ride the streets and see, you know, and you're there, you just, man, it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough.
It is tough.
Let's step over to something a little bit more positive.
Sure.
You know, you have your company called The Living Dream. Tell me some about that.
That is more of a mantra than it is a company. Okay. I want to say in my growth, career-wise, college-wise, life-wise, you know, just having to keep things in perspective and always wanting to do more. You're always trying to achieve and do all these things for yourself, for your family, to better yourself. When are you going to take that time to live that dream? You know, what's the end result? It's, you know, is it the journey or is it the destination? You know, so I got around some other business on what have you. And they always talked about, man, they were in a point in life where they were actually living the dream, you know, like living on 10% of their income kind of thing, you know, just, you know, the guys were doing extremely well. And it was just sharing thought processes.
Right.
And that's where that came from for me. You know, you got to get to a point in life where you're going to live your dream.
Right.
No, don't just continue to pursue your dream. You gotta live that dream sometime. You know, I look at what you've done, man, and I am in total awe. And I would most definitely say that that's exactly what you've been doing, you know, because I was like, man, this dude is actually doing something that we grew up doing side by side. I said, man, when you told me you was doing music professionally, I was like, that's unbelievable. But it's good. It's good.
I've been trying to do that, been doing that for the last almost 40 some years, man, you know.
But anyway, that's where it was for me, more of a mantra. Now, my wife and I, we had been involved in several network opportunities, you know. One that we were very familiar with was the Amway Corporation. And that's where we pretty much derived our retailing experience from. Change courses, went off in our careers. We're at the tail end of those right now. And we're looking at refocusing our efforts back there. So we know that the possibilities are there for us. We got the knowledge, background, experience to make it work. We made it work before. We just chose a different path. So this is where we're headed right now. You'll be hearing a lot about us here in the upcoming future. But I'm excited about where we are. I'm at a point right now where my time is so valuable, you know, and getting up and at 4 or 5 o'clock, you know, at somebody else's beck and call. It has to be on my dime. It needs to be on my dime. And that's where I am in life right now. I just need to be in a place where I can answer to me. I'm excited about it.
Fantastic. Wow. And you also have your actual company.
Brame Enterprises.
Brame Enterprises. Right. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's internet retailing experience. Again, we're going to be focusing primarily on health and wellness and beauty products. My wife, she's just beautiful as it is, but she has got a whole of background experience in this. And like I said, we got away from it, but the knowledge is with us. The knowledge is, we got a foundation already in place, and we just need to go on ahead and just relaunch and shoot for the stars, man. Mm-hmm. We got nothing to lose at this point. We've done everything that we need to do to take care of our family, and looking at that next generation of grandkids coming out, and this is legacy building time. You know, it's legacy building time. So we're going to be focusing on that, some health and wellness products, Nutrilite Corporation, and things of that nature, which is, you know, just been phenomenal. We've been taking these particular supplements for decades now, and they've served us well. They've served us well, and we've marketed them, and they've served clients extremely well. So we're hoping to do great things there also.
All right. Great, man. That's wonderful. You still got the baby face that you had when we were back in school. We were always referred to as the baby faces, you know.
Look, these cameras got good filters on them, partner. These cameras got good filters, man. That's what a lot of guys say, man, when are you going to take the filter off that camera, man? Show us what you look like.
Oh, wonderful, man.
Oh, believe it or not, my wife, she got me involved with doing some regimens for me too. So, hey, just seeing it's working. So,
yeah, so you guys are actually doing the whole company together.
Yes. Oh man, it wouldn't happen any other way. Wouldn't happen any other way.
That's wonderful.
The whole strive at this point in time is that, she's taught all her career and still teaching. I've been over here in IT and working with federal government, and whatever we do, we got to lock arms and ride it on out together, because if not, you can still grow apart right now.
Right.
That's not what we're shooting for. I don't want to become so different than her that I got to spend so much time in another state or another city or even the time of day.
Exactly.
If we can walk through the day together, man, that's even better.
And it becomes important as you get older, man. You want to have that special person next to you, man.
And who you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Don't you know it? Yeah. So, just pleased to be able to even be in that position, to make that happen. Yeah.
Oh, well, great. Well, listen, I've got one more question for you.
Sure.
Of course, our theme is about spiritual. And what does spiritual mean to you?
Spiritual for me is just, believing in God. Believing in God as a higher power, as the creator of all things. Trusting in his word and being led by his word. And for me, that's Jesus Christ. Okay. And then lending myself, my life, through his example, and to be that example for others to see. I have experienced some things, and I'm sure you have too in your life, that there's no way in the world nobody but God could have even informed somebody about you. But you going down a hall of strangers and stuff, and all of a sudden somebody just holler out, I know you're a Christian, kind of thing. You'd be like, where'd that come from, And I've gotten to the point right now when it happens, folks just walk up to me. I say, well, our Father in heaven must have told you so, because I didn't tell you, And that's pretty much how it's been going for me. I attend Third Baptist Church here in Portsmouth, man. It's an old historic church, 135 years old. Founded by 7 women and a pastor, man. And we've been in there since 85. My family, raised my family in that church.
Wow.
Again, here in Portsmouth, excellent place to raise a family. They say it's been tough, but I tell you, coming out of Gary, you pretty much can deal with most places.
If you can deal with Gary, you can deal with any other place. That's true.
That's right. I found this place, the whole Hampton Roads region of south east area of Virginia. I find it slow enough to stay out of trouble. Trouble just don't come looking for you like it does in other places,
Right.
I have been blessed. I honestly believe that I've been blessed to be a sounding, okay? And I don't know what it is that I just tend to have complete strangers can just walk up to me and tend to unload, some of the most intimate details of their life. And this was happening to me as a teenager, and I didn't understand. It used to scare the heck out of me, Eddie. I kid you not. Because a lot of times in my travels in college and what have you, I would get approached by someone at a bus station, train station, or in my travels, airport, or just at the store somewhere. Complete strangers. It didn't matter what race or ethnicity. They would just walk up to me and just start telling me some of the most intimate details of their life. Next day, it's like, okay, like it never impacts me. And it kind of like rolls off my back and I just keep going. And the people just keep coming. And I was sitting at the feet of this one gentleman who came to one of our churches for a anniversary. I think it was one of our church anniversaries. He was a friend of our pastor. And I kept asking myself, okay, why are all these people? Because here I am now, I'm about 45. And he was up in the pulpit preaching, man. He said, some of y'all are out in the audience wondering why these people keep coming up to you, asking you for stuff, telling you stuff. You really don't care to be around them because you don't feel that they're your class of people. And here I was, guilty of sin. He said, the reason that that's happening is you've been anointed for that. but God has blessed you to be that sounding board for those people. And right now, you're the only hope that they can see, And I thought about that thing as I sat there in my chair, man. I just literally almost just sank to the floor. And I took that and just held on to it, that word, and I just took it and held on to it. And that's pretty much how I've been going in life, Eddie. And I honestly believe that the more you help people, the more you're going to be able to help people.
All right, Bill. Listen, on those words, buddy, I would like to thank you so much for coming on the show, touching base with me, sharing your story with our listeners. And hopefully we'll get a lot of people out there that will be inspired by your talk, your story. And I just want to send a lot of love to you, buddy. And it's great to see you again and talk to you after so many years.
It is always my pleasure, Eddie. The short time that we've kind of reunited, man, it is always exciting, man, to just communicate with you. I do want to make a special shout out though, to my wife. Her birthday's coming up here this month. And baby, I just want to say I love you. Just thank you for being by my side all these years. I know I've been but stupid at times, but you just kind of toughed it out with me. Love you, girl. You be good to yourself. And Eddie, man, thank you so much for allowing me to just be in your presence, man. I do appreciate you.
All right. Same here, man. A lot of love to you, bro.
Same to you, man.
And we'll keep in touch for sure.
Oh, most definitely. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
This is MPP, and I'm Eddie C.
Wow. Those were 3 fantastic interviews. I really enjoyed all 3 of my guests this week as well. They had a lot to say. I had to actually make the interviews a little shorter because we really had long talks. But I only wanted to give you all the best of what they had to say. This week's theme, of course, is spiritual. And it's quite a deep word to actually explore because I think it goes much more than just expressing something that you see or something that you just feel. It's beyond all of that. So here's my quote.
Spiritual. Loving unconditionally. Meditating and reflection. Looking forward and not dwelling on the past. A strong faith in what you believe and sharing the gift of living the moment.
Well, that's about it for this week's show. But before I go, I'd like to thank my 3 guests, Mr. Andy Smeets, the lovely Madeline Bell, and my dear friend, Mr. Louis Brame, for sharing their stories and telling you what spiritual means to them. You can find me on all platforms like Spotify, Android, and Apple. On Facebook, look for My Positive Podcast, and my website is mypositivepodcast.com. You can also contact me via my website or Facebook. A very special thanks to my technical producer, Iswan. This show is a production by Antwork Podcast Service. My name is Eddie C., and this was MPP, My Positive Podcast. Tune in next week and stay positive.